kind of anemic. Some of them are antiseptic, where they're so clean and they're so formal. Some of our prayers have become repetitious, and some of them are just downright long-winded. We try to impress God with the multitude of words. We try to impress God with flowery words. He's not impressed with all that. He's not. It's not so much what comes out of our mouth. He's looking at what our heart's looking like. Are we sincere about the prayers that we are praying? So we spend a lot of time praying around the issues, but we never really get down to actually trusting God. I was reading a story about Dwight Moody. He was a famous evangelist from Chicago. And he went on a vacation to England. And while he was there, because he was so famous and people knew him, he was asked to preach. So he preached that morning service, and after preaching, he wrote in his journal that these are some of the deadest people I've ever seen. But he was also asked to preach that night, so he knew he had to go back. So I don't know about anybody that's ever preached before, and you preach before some people that are dead, you are not looking forward to going back.
Say that, Pastor.
Because I've told you saying amen to a preacher is like saying sick 'em to a bad dog. You gotta, and when people talk back to you, make you want to preach. So he knew he had to go back, so he went back and preached that night service. And something began to happen. The people began to come to life. Moody made an altar appeal, and hundreds of souls came and gave their life to the Lord. The next day, he left and went to Ireland to continue his vacation. But when he got off the train, there was someone that met him with a memo. You got to come back. Revival has broken out. Mm-hmm. He began to wonder what caused the change. What he did not know was that there was a little 80-year-old invalid widow named Mary Ann Adelard who had been praying every day for revival. And because of her prayers, God answered her prayers and brought revival. Leonard Ravenhill said that and I like this. He said the church is dying on its feet because it's not living on its knees. The church is dying on its feet because it's not living on its knees. Humble yourself. Prayer. The third hindrance to revival is, what are your priorities? God began to speak to the people in this verse, and he said, seek my face. And when we look at that, the word seek means to search out by any method. God bless you, brethren. Especially by worship and prayer. So God is telling us that we need to stop looking for help and purpose in everything in life and start looking towards him. I found out that revival does not come to people who seek it, but to people who seek God. If we seek God, revival will come. When we seek his face, we're saying we're hungrier. God, we are hungrier for you than we are for the things that you can do for us. And I found out that in reality, the essence of genuine revival is just simply falling in love with God all over again. When we as the people of God begin to fall in love with him all over again, revival will come. Ask yourself the question, what is the number one priority in my life? When anything other than God is the number one priority in our lives, we are out of balance. Because when God is our first priority, the things he cares about are the things we care about. When we're seeking his face, we're able to see what his attention is on. He wants us to love what he loves and hate what he hates and do what he does. So if we really want to know where our priorities are today, we can just simply ask ourselves 3 questions. Ask yourself these questions. On what activity do I spend most of my time? Question 2. On what do I spend most of my money? Question 3. On what do I focus most of my thoughts? And once we answer these 3 questions, we begin to get a clear picture of where our priorities are. What do I spend most of my time on? What do I spend most of my money on? What do I spend the most time thinking about? Those determine where our priorities are. And if God is not someplace in there, then we are out of balance. Our priorities it's a hindrance to revival. If we are not seeking the face of God, that hinders revival from taking place. And remember we told you before, let's get to the point where we quit seeking his hand and start seeking his face. Because we talked about how seeking his hand, that represents the blessings of God and what God can do for us. But when we start seeking his face, that represents relationship and what we can do for him. Humble ourselves. Pray. Seek his face. We spend so much time doing everything else but seeking the face of God. We got to start seeking his face. I thought about if we get the attitude like Moses had. Lord, I want to see your glory. Moses said, I want to see your glory. And God said, you can't see my glory. If you see my glory, you'll be consumed. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, though. Because you're so adamant about seeing my glory, I'm going to let you see the hinder parts. I'm going to tuck you into the cleft of this rock. I'm going to hide you behind this rock. And I'm going to allow you to see my hind parts. Allow you to see maybe the trail of my veil, the train of my veil as I just walk past you. And because Moses just seen that, the Bible let us know that after seeing that, his countenance changed, and it was so bright that whenever he'd come before the people, he'd have to put a veil over his face because they couldn't look upon him after being in the presence of God. And so he would put a veil on his face when he stood before the people. When he went into the presence of God, he removed the veil. When we start seeking God, I dare say, Felicia, when we start seeking God, you're not going to have to tell anybody you're seeking Him. Right. They'll know. Because there's going to be a change that takes place in your life. That's right. There's going to be something different about your countenance. There's going to be something different about your attitude. There's going to be something different about the way you deal with things. The way you used to deal with things, you're going to deal with them totally different. Right. Because you've been seeking the face of God, and you're trying to love the things He loves and hate the things He hates and do the things He tells you to do. You're trying to do those things that are pleasing to God. There is no way we're going to be able to seek the face of God and change does not take place in our lives. Because the closer we get to God and the closer we try to start being like Him, we know there's some things that are going to have to start falling off. And I believe that's why some people don't even try to seek a relationship with God. Because they know if I get close to God, Brother Mekki, I know some things I'm going to have to give up. And I'm not ready to give them up yet. Right. And we're just being real today. Yes, sir. Some things you're going to have to give up. And it's not because, and the only reason is, because so many times all we talk about is if I get saved, I got to give up this and I got to get. The only thing God really asks us to give up are those things that are detrimental to us. Those things that are going to destroy us. Those are the things He asks us to give up. But He doesn't just take stuff away from us and not give us anything. Look at the Bible lets us know that He daily, the psalmist said, the Lord daily loads us with blessings. It's like almost every day we wake up, it's like the Lord's up in heaven just pouring out blessings upon us. But all we can see about, I can't do this and I can't do that. And some of us, it's a good thing we can't do that. Because it was leading to our destruction. But seeking the face of God. Humble ourselves. Pray. Seek His face. And the last thing He talked about, He said sin is a hindrance to revival. And He told the people that if you want to see revival, then we've got to turn from our wicked ways. God was telling them to forsake their sins and to embrace holiness. So we need to understand that sin closes the ears of God to our prayer. Sin separates us from God.